Welcome to the Happy Mama Village podcast with Bryann and Annie, a podcast about mamas, for mamas, and by mamas. Hi, everyone. This is the Happy Mama Village podcast, episode 5. We are your host, Bryann Zielinski.
And Annie Henderson.
And it is great to be back here in our village where we talk about all things pertaining to happy mamas, like relationships, parenting, drinking wine with goldfish, self-care, etc. We've had a lot going on, guys, since the last time we met. We had Memorial Day, school ending. How have you been, Annie?
I have been crazy busy. I just finished helping out at a local school. I was the long-term counselor sub, an amazing school in the district, and I got to meet so many beautiful families and kids that I was able to help. But the end of the year is just notoriously crazy, not just for teachers, but for parents and everyone, right?
I know. It's crazy. I mean, I was thinking we had the last day of school, we had Memorial Day, we had graduations, we had STAR testing the week before school was out.
Wow.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
A lot going on.
A little too much. Just as wild and crazy as December, but it sneaks up on you a little bit.
Yes, it does totally sneak up. And you know, that's a great transition, and it gets us right into our topic about co-parenting, because with all of that busyness and hectic lifestyle, you've got graduations and maybe birthday parties and things like that where you're going to be in the same space as your ex, and there's a lot of opportunities for success, and there's a lot of opportunities for failure.
So true.
So we have got some tips for you today that will hopefully help with the co-parenting. Honestly, Annie, this is a topic that could probably be its own series. It's part 5 in our series on divorce and parenting, but there is so much that I want to say about this that it could probably be its own series.
It could, and it probably will be eventually.
So co-parenting it's hard. It's a weird dynamic. There's literally no other kind of working relationship where you have to navigate something so important with someone with whom you have so much baggage. It's just a weird dynamic.
Nothing like it.
It's a relationship fraught with pitfalls. And these are pitfalls that have hungry alligators waiting to devour you at the bottom. That's how crazy it is. So the question is, how do we navigate this treacherous road and avoid those pitfalls? Right?
That is the key question.
That's the question.
How do we do it?
How do we do it? So studies show that the quality of the relationship between parents directly correlates to the mental and emotional well-being of children and their propensity for anxiety and depression. And this is true whether you're divorced or married. So for the sake of your children, you really have to set aside your relationship issues. But we realize that's a lot easier said than done. So we've put some tips together for you to try and help. And Annie, you've got our first tip, so take it away.
All right. And mamas, just a reminder, these are all a work in progress. We are a work in progress. There will be times where even the best of us will slip up on any of these tips. So give yourself grace and forgiveness, and just be sure to learn each time you make a choice and see if there's something you can learn from it. Right, Bryann?
Definitely. We are by no means the experts on this.
Okay, so tip number 1, we've mentioned this in previous podcasts, but it's just a good one to start off with. I have likened my daughter coming back to me after spending time with her dad as detox. And I will say this, it is not still like that. That was just in the beginning when things were still fresh and she was young and she was still getting used to things being done one way here and one way there, but it is not a never-ending detox. It used to be my least favorite day when she would come back because it was just so stressful and all sorts of kind of drama around it. And now it is my favorite day to reconnect and communicate. And so, yes, it, but for some of you that are just working on being consistent with your own rules and not adjusting depending on what just happened at the other house, it can be like detox.
I know, I agree with you. I think that's a great way to describe it because these kids are having to reacclimate at every house. I mean, they're going back and forth. There are different rules, different expectations, different parenting styles, different atmospheres, you name it. And they're having to navigate that. They're having to go back and forth. And so when they arrive at your house from being at the other parent's house, it can be a little jarring. It can be hard to remember for them. It may be hard. Okay, what are the rules at this house? And I think taking the time to detox with them a little bit, help them get over that detox, is so important.
Yes, give them just room to talk without without judgment. Just have some quality time. Get back into the routines. I know um, on our day, it's a lot of talking. It's making lunches for the week and just kind of setting ourselves up for success. Knocking out some chores and stuff together while we're just all chatting, making sure we have a great family dinner all together at the table. So we just have that time to process and talk and hear how things went.
I love that. I love that. Giving them a secure, safe environment that's peaceful. Like a peaceful transition of power.
I like it. I like it. And you have tip number 2.
Tip number 2 is clean slate. Forget you were ever married to this other person. Wipe the mental and emotional slate clean. Think of your ex in terms of the before and the after. The before version is the one that you're mad at. That's the person that you don't like. The one who makes you want to stick your head in a meat grinder. But the after version has a completely clean slate. And if you can do that in your mind and really divide the before and the after, you'll really do yourself a huge favor. By doing that, it will hopefully make it easier for you to put your kids' needs first and avoid the baggage that you're holding with your ex. Practically speaking, when a conversation comes up and begins to take a turn towards the past, maybe some old baggage starts bubbling up to the surface, you need to take the high road. And the way to do that is you just gently shut down that line of communication. Pretend as if a mailman asked you about your deepest secret and you're having this conversation with a mailman. You wouldn't yell and scream and cry and blame and curse at your mailman. You would just politely excuse yourself from that conversation.
Very good.
So,
just transactional.
yeah, so just pretend like you're co-parenting with your mailman. So that's my tip. That's tip number 2.
That's awesome. Oh, you know what? You had mentioned something to me earlier, and I loved the way you put it. You had mentioned countries at war. Can you share that?
Yeah. Okay. So, the past is the past. It's over and done. If you think about it, the United States and Great Britain has a really violent, awful, crazy history. There was a lot of crap that went down between those two countries. I mean, we had a war, we fought a couple wars against them. And then it was over and we've moved on. And since then, we've become allies. Well, if we hadn't put 1776 behind us and we hadn't moved on, if we continued to bring it up and be like, hey, King George, he did this and y'all did that, and we wouldn't be the allies that we are today. So, the war's over, the war's been fought. Get over it. It's done. Your war is over. The divorce is final. So just move on. You both have jobs to do, and you're not going to be able to do them as parents if you keep going back to the past and dredging up all this old history. So just pretend like you're United States and they're Great Britain, and you're just going to move on and you're going to get your jobs done.
Very good, very good. Yes, you're allies and you're both, your job is to take care of your kiddo and do the best for them. So you
Exactly.
have mutual goals. One
Yes.
one other thing I wanted to mention, and you'll probably hear me mention this name a lot, but Brooke Castillo, you'll have to check her out. But she talks about having a manual and how we all have these basically secret manuals for people, like this is the manual for how I want my mom to act, and she should do this, and she should do this, and she should say this, and she should respond in this way, and then everything would be perfect. But they don't know about this manual that you have
They
written
don't
for
have the
them.
manual.
They do not have it. Same thing for your ex. And then what she goes on to talk about is, imagine if they did go by the manual. How would you feel about them? How would you do this? And then can you still feel this way towards them? Can you still be grateful that you have your child because of them? Are you still grateful that, they provide food and shelter for your kids? So just kind of shifting your mindset and realizing they don't have the manual. They haven't even
Yes.
seen your manual that you've created for them. And the fact that you're not even together, your manual is
They're probably
definitely
not ever going to see your manual.
they will not. They will not. All right. So that's it. I just had to sneak that in. Feel free to ask me more
Love
questions
it.
about that and I can direct you to there. But tip number 3, this is a big one. Don't react.
It's
Don't
hard.
react. I know before we've talked about being proactive. So today is don't react. If you get a snarky text or a comment, don't feel the need to respond immediately unless it's an emergency. There's usually not a whole
It
lot of
rarely
snark in
is.
that situation. But take some time. Take 10 minutes, take 5 minutes, however long it takes to distract yourself and get in a calm, peaceful place where you can respond level-headed and you're not emotional. And then at the same time, you're giving them a little time and space as well. So,
Exactly.
and as
Exactly.
always,
It's not a
you're being a good role model.
yes. So there's no reward for the fastest texter. That's not a
Exactly.
thing. So you're not going to win some award for that. So take the time, take 10 minutes, take a breather, and then you probably won't send the text that you want to send, but you'll end up sending the text that you should send.
Exactly, and guess what? That means less texts with your ex, which is the best, right? You don't wanna keep going
Yes.
back and forth, back and forth. You just wanna get to, what do we both want? What do we both need to say? How can I say this in a peaceful way that gets my point across without any extra emotions involved?
Right. And do yourself a favor, because we all get to that point. I mean, I know I've been there, that you want to immediately respond. You want to, say something, and the conversation, the faster the conversation goes back and forth, the worse it becomes. So if you can be the agent for slowing it down, then you have a chance to kind of steer yourself away from that pitfall, which is a nasty conversation. So just remember, the slower a conversation takes, probably the better the outcome.
Exactly, and don't react. That goes for most situations. It goes for talking to your kids as well. It goes for just giving yourself space to think and calm down and think rationally.
Very true. Very true. So that's going to lead us right into tip number 4, which is positive interactions and finding common ground. Um, do your best to have positive and kind interactions during drop-offs, soccer games, piano practice, etc., whenever. It's tempting, though, to think that no communication is a good thing. But if you never speak, if you never acknowledge your child's other parent, it will be virtually impossible to co-parent with them. And the goal is to co-parent.
Yes.
Um, you know what I mean? Like you can't co-parent with somebody that you're ignoring. That's hard to do. Um, I'm not saying that you have to be buddy buddy with them. That's really not the goal. If it ends up there, great, good for you. But that was not an option for me. It wasn't going to go there for me. But you have to remember your ex is your child's family. And you and your ex are the only family that your child is going to have. So don't you be the stinker who ruins every single event in your child's life by creating a hostile and cold atmosphere.
Exactly.
And I have a great example. If you think about it, in your child's life, from now until forever, you're going to be seeing your ex. You're going to, because you're family with your child. And so graduations, baptisms, weddings, the birth of children, you're both going to have to share space. And for your child's sake and for your own sake, you want those events to be as happy and joyful as possible. And I have a friend who had a baby, and the baby was just a couple of hours old, and instead of enjoying the time with her newborn, she was stressed out about trying to coordinate when her mom and dad could come and visit the grandchild,
That's
because the mom and the dad could not be in the same room
and
together.
that's a lot. I feel like that's a lot of families have gotten into that position.
Yes, like, okay, well, or it's the grandchild's first birthday. Well, who's going to get invited to the birthday party because the grandparents can't be in the same room together? I mean, talk about taking all the joy from your child
Mm.
for the rest of their life. You don't want to do
It
that.
shouldn't have
You
to be
don't
the
want to
mediator.
participate in that. Yeah, and do you really want the birth of your grandchild? Do you want that to be ruined? If you don't, you're going to have to take control, and you're going to have to take the take the high road, you know?
Exactly. You wanna be able to focus
Yeah.
just on that grandbaby and not about how you're gonna feel around your ex. That shouldn't even be a thought in your head when there's something so wonderful to celebrate.
Exactly. And that starts from the very beginning. You can't wait 20 years and all of a sudden expect for that to happen. You've got to start from day one, planting that seed and watering that plant so that it eventually grows into the kind of relationship where you can enjoy the birth of a grandchild
Very
together.
good. And like you
Um,
said, it doesn't have to be buddy buddy. You just Stephen Covey, he used to talk about emotional bank accounts and how you will do little deposits. So saying hi or smiling or, sharing a sweet picture that you took that you think is beautiful of y'all's child together. Something easy, simple. It doesn't have to be a big transaction, but that will put, pretend money in this emotional bank account. And that way it starts to fill up with just these small little acts of kindness and transaction that really aren't maybe huge deals to you, but when there does happen to be something, a disagreement or something, instead of depleting you and going into the negative, it'll just dip a little bit so that when you do have these shared occasions that should be joyous, that it's not a big deal. Y'all are mostly in the green and y'all are doing well together.
Definitely, definitely. And that, kind of goes right into that finding common ground. Look for opportunities to agree. What can you agree
Your
on?
awesome child.
Yes,
That's the
you
easy
both have
one.
a yes, exactly. Can you agree on bedtimes? When is a good time for the other parent to call? Device usage, what movie ratings are acceptable? What are you going to do if they want to see a movie that's outside of that acceptable range? Are you going to call for permission? Uh, Try to just find some kind of common ground, things that you can agree on, and then build from there.
Very good.
What you
That's a
think?
great idea, great thoughts. And I'm sure we will go over a lot of this more in the future as well. Um, so one last tip for now is setting boundaries. And as I said before, Brooke Castillo talks about how setting boundaries isn't you going and giving them an ultimatum and laying down some threats if they don't do this. It is setting up boundaries for yourself. So for me, it had to do with when is an okay time to call and talk. And our bedtime is earlier than over at her dad's. So I had to set that boundary of, you know, 8 o'clock, because that's when we start getting ready for bed. And then, it can spiral into longer and longer. And if it's a special occasion or we were out and we couldn't talk, you can make arrangements. But for the most part, and I had to watch myself too, because I would lose track of time and like have to catch myself. And I saw my watch at 8:01, and I was like, nope, I set this boundary. If I want it to be consistent on both sides, I need to stick to it as well.
That's boundaries. I'm going to say boundaries are
They
hard for
are.
me.
That's everybody.
I'm not a very good boundary maker or keeper, I should say.
It does take practice. And I think everyone's heard the word and would like to use it, but I think it can get a little confusing on, it's not ultimatums, it's just staying true to what you want. I actually have a real quick boundary story, and it had to do with let me see. I'll disguise for the the sake of these people. They were going over to their in-laws' house. And the in-laws, after a little while of sitting there with them, they would somehow insult. I don't know how bad it was, but they would just make some comments that were not kind. Um, and eventually, the new person to this relationship caught on to, oh, this is not a good pattern or habit. So the next time, I guess they had talked about it, and they decided, if it happened again, they weren't going to make a big deal of it. They were just going to get up and say their goodbyes and go ahead and leave. And then the next time they came, it happened again, because it does take practice, right? And they left, and then they didn't come back and visit for like a longer period of time. So I say this so many times, even to the students I work with, but it's kind of like training puppies sometimes. You have to practice, you have to stay consistent, and you have to be patient, and you have to hold yourself to it too. It can be tricky, but with practice, eventually they figured it out, and they came the next time, and they did not have insulting words to say, and they got to stay. But it took a while with training.
Yeah, you said something earlier when we were chatting about that you're doing it for your children also. Like you have to set boundaries in order to show your children how to set boundaries for themselves later on.
Yes.
Like they're not going to learn that unless we teach it to them. So for me, yes, setting boundaries is hard, keeping boundaries is hard. I tend to kind of be a softie with that. But if I want to teach my kids how to have good boundaries in the future, I'm going to have to show them what that looks like.
Exactly, because kids and exes can all look for the weak spots and get around those boundaries if you start to not be consistent with them. So
Yes,
and it's a good lesson for yourself as well to do what you
definitely.
say you're going to do.
All right, awesome tip. So there you have it. Those 5 tips.
Woohoo.
That wraps us up for today. I think that was some great stuff. Thank you, Annie.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening. Next week, we're going to be discussing whether you should pair wine with goldfish or Cheez-Its. Just kidding. No, next week we're going to discuss self-care.
That's an amazing one, and I have a Memorial Day story for that specific one. So,
Awesome. I can't wait to hear
yes,
it.
it's perfect in terms of self-care.
Perfect. Okay. So for more information about life coaching or to interact with us directly, you can check us out on Facebook at the Happy Mama Village or on our individual websites. Mine is www.rebuildingwithbryann.com.
And mine is just my name, AnnieMHenderson.com.
The show notes will have our email addresses and additional information. But thank you for joining us, and we will see you back here at the Village next week.
See you next week.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Happy Mama Village. If you liked what you heard, please leave us a comment, like, or share, and be sure to join Annie and Bryann for next week's episode.